Hey everybody, this is Adam here at David French Music. We're doing an instrument maintenance series on how to keep your instrument in tip-top shape day to day, week to week, in between times you come see us at the repair shop for professional repair services and cleaning. In this video, we'll be talking about how to maintain your French horn. In this particular video, we're using a student double horn with mechanical rotors, so it's going to be a little bit different than traditionally strung rotors. The first thing we could talk about here is the mouthpiece. Anything on any woodwind or brass instrument, the closer the part of the instrument is to our face, or where we're going to play the instrument from, the more it affects everything else going on with the instrument. So it's super important to make sure our mouthpiece is in tip-top shape. So with French horns, most student mouthpieces are silver plated, meaning they can handle cold, warm, and hot water. So to clean them out, you can invest in a mouthpiece cleaning brush. A standard trumpet size one or just a brass mouthpiece cleaning brush should suffice. To clean it out, I like to do it as often as I feel. Depending on how hygienic of a player you are, you might want to do it more often than not. So you can run it under warm water with some soap. Any hand soap or any dish soap will do. I run it from the bottom of the shank all the way through the top of the mouthpiece opening. Just running that a few times until you can see the light of day through your mouthpiece. How to know if it's time to clean it? Just make sure you take a look down, and if you can see the light of day all the way through and you don't see anything raising up through there or any weird stuff going on, you're good to go. But this is a great way to keep everything sanitary and to keep the mouthpiece the exact bore size it needs to be to resonate properly. And the other big thing with mouthpieces to consider is the shank down at the bottom here. We know that the circle usually needs to be totally round to fit and interact properly with the mouthpiece receiver. The problem with this is students and some professionals, sometimes we drop our mouthpiece, sometimes accidents happen. So that circle becomes a triangle or a square or a trapezoid. We want to make sure that we can re-round the mouthpiece. A regular mouthpiece truing tool won't work in this situation necessarily, depending on the size of the French horn mouthpiece. In this case, a regular mouthpiece truing tool will work. This is fitting on a Bach mouthpiece, which is great. Once I get that fitted in there, you can also invest, or your band director or a private instructor can invest in a rawhide mallet. This is just a very light one. And you can lightly tap around. And once you get the circumference of the mouthpiece hammered a few times, you can check again, make sure everything's a circle, and then you're good to go. Certain mouthpieces, depending on their actual taper and how wide they are, would require a smaller arbor or a French horn size truing tool, which you could definitely look into. Fits a little bit more friendly with the smaller mouthpieces, but the same process is true of hammering that around. If you feel uncomfortable with that, I would definitely just encourage a private instructor or a band director to have that in their arsenal of tools and tricks. Moving on down to the instrument, most student horns and a lot of professional ones are lacquered, which means that they were raw brass first, polished up to a nice shine, and then sprayed with a clear lacquer. What's nice about this is it keeps the instrument in nice looking condition for a long time, and it also makes it easy to maintain. So if you're somebody that wants to keep it nice and shiny for as long as you can, brass can easily withstand being sprayed with a little bit of alcohol or a little bit of any type of disinfectant. Here I just have some Lysol. That can easily then be wiped off with a cotton cloth, which Yamaha makes a nice cotton cloth here. Any type of paper towel or a regular cotton towel should suffice. And you can wipe it off. It'll take away some of the grease, some of the buildup on the finish, and it will keep it looking nice and shiny. You can do that at your own discretion. There's no kind of frequency you should follow. Moving into the actual instrument, for my slides, all of my moving slides for French horn need to just go to a certain spot and stay. We usually try and find the sweet spot for intonation. So for that, I like to use Hetman number 7, which is called slide gel. This, in a way, even though there are more slides than, say, a trumpet or a trombone, actually makes your job easier because every slide gets the same exact thing. Again, Hetman number 7 for your slides. Great way to keep them moving and to keep them from binding up on you. Going into the next system, this is where things get a little bit more complex for a player, but not to worry, there's a few tips and tricks here. So on the underside of the French horn, if we have a mechanical French horn, like we do here, you have a series of bearing and linkages, which are just screws that go into ball bearings, which hold one part of the rotor to the next. For that, Yamaha makes a really nice oil called lever oil. You can purchase that anywhere, from their website or a local retailer, or anywhere you can find it. For that, you can just very lightly go in there in between the parts they're connected and apply some lever oil. It keeps the mechanisms moving as nice as they can without binding, and it keeps things that are usually clanky a little bit more quiet, which is nice. Getting inside of the rotor, for an actual player, you're going to approach it a little bit differently than, say, a technician would. So what I usually recommend, and there's a couple ways to deal with this, open up the corresponding slide. So right now we're working on the first rotor lever. There's a few different ways you can go. Yamaha makes a nice synthetic rotor oil, as well as Hetman. In this case, I actually prefer the telescoping top here. It's got the little needle tip. So what's really nice is I can precisely pinpoint getting my oil down into where the actual rotor is without interfering with the grease. Grease and oil don't really mix well together, and they cause more problems than they do good. Every so often, I would say maybe once a week, once every couple of weeks, as you have time, get that down there and get some oil in there. It's going to help keep things moving pretty freely. Hetman also, getting back to bearing and linkages again, they do make a bearing and linkage oil too, which you can apply the same way as I showed the lever oil. Those numbers are number 12 for rotor, and then number 14 for bearing and linkage oil. These are great ways to keep everything moving. The reason why we want to do this is because the enemy to every instrument, woodwind and brass alike, is moisture. So as we introduce moisture into the instrument, as it starts to dry, what we get left with are mineral deposits and different deposits in there from us as the player. So if we don't always have a steady supply of oil and grease to help combat the buildup of that, you can get rotors that no longer go up and down, levers that don't want to work, and slides that no longer come in and out, which is when you really need to get help from a repair shop. This is a great way to help mitigate coming in more frequently than you need to. For any brass instrument, I recommend coming in at least once a year. That'll help keep everything in tip-top shape and keep your French horn working as long as it can.